Hey, everybody. This is Matt Dabbs. I had the pleasure to be talking with Grant Skeldon today on the podcast and on the YouTube channel. And Grant and I were just catching up about the work that he's doing around Nashville and Franklin, just helping churches to help out the millennial generation and Gen Z, and the ministry that he's doing through Think and also through the NextGen Summit that's coming up in November there in the Nashville area. And he was just talking about what they're doing with that and the lineup they have and the impact it has. And just like really amazed. We were just praying thanks to God for using that right before we started this. And so I'm just curious to hear what Grant's going to share with us about helping that next generation be raised up and kind of what you're seeing God do. And so, Grant, welcome.
Yeah, good to be with you guys. I've listened to the podcast several times before, and I just thankful for you guys continuing to normalize discipleship with the different stories y'all bring on.
Yeah, man, we appreciate that. And I do want to mention that we're going to put links in the descriptions of everything so that you can go directly to what God is doing through this ministry. And so, Grant, tell us a little bit about with Gen Z and I guess millennials too, to some degree, but mostly Gen Z, it sounds like kind of like what you're seeing out there in terms of that generation and just raising up people in faith.
Yeah, I do think millennials and Gen Z are a lot more alike than they are to SAXers and boomers. And so I'll probably just say next gen, but I think some of my synopsis on the next generation, I may not quote this perfectly, but I've tried to start to categorize, hey, what are some things that are concerning, maybe even a little different, and what this next generation has to go through that generations in the past maybe didn't, or it's just an uptick that we need to take notice of. And I would say that one of the things is that I think the next generation has been coddled by their parents. And so that comes with their upbringing. I think we can sometimes, there's maybe from hard parenting, especially that I feel like the boomers went through or even did, kind of like hey, rub some dirt on it, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, like get over it. Even, I don't feel like I see a lot of millennials talking about like, hey, we had to walk to school or showing like uphill, or if anything, I do agree it's getting more and more convenient for the next generation. And so it's almost like the culture is even coddling the next generation. Maybe coddling is a strong word for making things quick to get, easier to get, more options from every level. Like from, if you want to watch a show, you have access to it all right now. You want to buy a car, you don't even have to go through a car salesman anymore. It's online right now. If you want to listen to a song, you don't have to go to the store anymore and buy the CD for the one song you like, or catch it on the radio to record it. Even millennials had to do these things. And now you can just have every song you want as long as you pay $9 a month. And you just get, yeah, I mean, even dating has been impacted in many ways. You don't like that girl? Well, maybe this next girl, not her either. Then swipe to the next girl, the next girl. And that there's 6, 7, 8, 10 different options of apps. If you don't like the girls on this app, check out the girls on this app. These girls, it's kind of such a unique time, but I would say that even in the faith, we're not too far from coddling the next generation sometimes, where I often tell parents, we've got to stop saving our kids from the savior. And we often jump in their difficult times. And I'm not saying when they're in near death experiences, that's where we do want to jump in, or when they're going to go into a huge crisis, we do want to jump in. But sometimes we just save them anytime and every time we can. When it's in the past, it's like, this is just a part of growing up. This is a part of maturing, and consequences actually can be helpful to rob people of consequences, especially minor consequences, or risk even is actually, I think, harmful in some ways. The verse, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil. We fear no evil because we feel it. We know that God is with me. And I jokingly sometimes say, I think the next generation could read it as, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil because mom is with me. She comforts insurances, her money, and I can always move back home, basically. Like, it's always saving them. And if you're always getting saved, you don't need to rely on God. If you're always getting saved, you're not going to go through what each of us know. If we think about some of our closest, dearest, I would say nearest seasons with God, they often aren't the best, highest moments, though they are often that too. They are often, especially, we start with low moments where we almost realize the reality of, man, I need God. Like, man, I remember I'm going to his word because it's all I have right now. I'm praying to him because it's all I can do right now. I'm believing like I've never believed before. I also sense him near right now. Those are usually, that could be weeks, those just come sometimes can be months, and sometimes can be years. Those seasons are not, I would always say, seasons we want to return to. If you could wish, hey, could I be in that season again right now? We say, no, no, God, I don't want to be in that season again. But if God was like, well, do you want me to erase that season from your story? We'd be like, absolutely not. Those are the sanctifying seasons where they grow our faith, our boldness, mature us, make us more dependent, give us way more humility. And anyway, just to start with the coddling pieces, I think we do them an injustice if we coddle them because they don't rely on God. They rely on us, and just, we can be enabling them. And so what then happens is, if I think the next generation is being coddled by their parents, I think they're now being criticized by their bosses because they're unequipped to go into the workforce. Their work ethic is not what it once was from generations past. Their goals, their drive, how they think they should be treated, what they think they should get, and how fast they think they should get that. It can be infuriating for those who employ the next generation. And so if we can't coddle, if we coddle them in the first half, they're going to be criticized in the second half. Like, if they're, I would add on this, coddled by their parents, criticized by their bosses, I would say they're being confused by our culture. What once was, and there's so many things that were just in the last 7 years that once were like, there's a John Wesley quote, I believe, where he says, what one generation tolerates, the next generation celebrates. And we're seeing things that just, so many things that are changing in this generation. Of course, there's technology in their culture that's rapidly advancing, but so are values. So many values have changed. And I would say that leads to my fourth thing of where they're confused by our culture. I would say they're also canceled by their convictions. There are values that the historic churches have for thousands of years that now are cancelable just to align with what we've always aligned with. Now this generation has to navigate, man, I love Jesus, but I don't know if I want to be a bigot, or I love Jesus. I don't know if I want to be called hateful, or all these words that now you sometimes can be automatically associated with just because God saved you and changed your heart. It's a perfect plan of the enemy to like hurl these labels to a relationship with God, but they can be canceled by their convictions. And lastly, this is more of the world we're growing up in and seem like we're continuing to go into is, I would say they're crippled by debt. So confused by our culture, canceled by their convictions. And many in the next generation, especially post-college, have been crippled by debt. And so that can lead to a lot of anxiety, a lot of, even I would say, depression, a lot of, man, when you're a generation, but one good thing we can say about them is so marked by passion and this desire to change the world, to do good, to be a part of something bigger than themselves. However, when you don't have the means to, the plan towards, the mentor disciples in your life to help and open doors for you, it can lead to a lot of anxiety. It's like, it's a powder keg that has no outlet. And I think that we're seeing a lot of imploding, a lot of burnout at earlier ages because the young leaders, they lack the wisdom, but they have the passion. And so that's why I love what you guys do is, how do we connect those who have all this passion and time even to go and change the world and do something bigger than themselves, but then align that to a eternal purpose that's bigger than just a cause that might be cool and trendy right now, but won't matter 10 years from now, but something that matters for eternity, and also connected to the wisdom so that they are just, I think, the blind leading the blind. I like saying like disrupting division through discipleship. So like this division between generations really hurts us because you have older people who always are saying things like, man, if I could go back to your age, Grant, I would just do it so differently. If I could go back to when I was 20, I almost wish I could. I would prioritize this. I would do this. I would do that. I would have stopped. I would cut this off. They have so much wisdom of what they would have done if they could go back. And then you have young people who are like, the scariest question I think you could ask a high school senior, and especially a college student who's about to graduate. The scariest question is, hey, what do you think you're going to do after you graduate? That's so scary for them because often colleges, I think, can guarantee like debt more than an actual job after college. Like even this is another broken chink in the system of like that colleges don't set you apart like they used to. If you get a bachelor's degree today compared to 20 or 30 years ago. And so a lot of the culture that this generation is going through and navigating isn't exactly like it was even 10 years ago, let alone 20 or 30. And I just think this generation that's older, that's got like, hey, if I could go back to your age, this is what I do. Well, how amazing is it when they can connect to a younger generation who's like, man, I don't know what to do. I know I want to do something meaningful, but I'm scared of that question.
Mm,
Again, it's the enemy's perfect plan to divide the wisdom from the passion and those with time.
wow. I'm glad you said all that. And that's really amazing. There's like 100 things I want to say, like when you're saying all that. So, but let me boil it down to what do younger people wish older people knew? Or like, let's start with that. Like, are there things that, because there's things older people know that they wish younger people knew, but like, what are the things that the young people would like the older people to know? Is it things like, I may seem unapproachable, but please approach me? Like things
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, that's a good question, man. My wife said this like 2 days ago, and I thought it was so spot on. Is she said that she believes that the enemy is whispering in the ear of both generations a lie that's so similar. And it's to the older person, the lie is the younger people don't want to learn anything from you, or you have nothing to offer, or that your life is not glorious enough for them to want to follow you. Or you're not qualified to disciple the next generation. And so it's like this inadequacy. And then same thing to younger people is there's an intimidation of them towards the older generation of like, there's no one that wants to pour into you, or your life isn't like you thought it would be, that you have anything worth investing in. And you don't even know how, you don't have any people older in your life, even that if you wanted to. It's a lot of like, you can't do this. And I think the truth is there is a lot of young people, not all, but there are a lot of young people that would love to be in relationship with older people who could help them get further faster, and not just in their mission, but also in their maturity, I would say. And I think even Gen Z does even a better job than millennials in this, that it seems like they're cool with hanging out with older people and want to be around older people. Like, and there just continues to be an uptick, not just in the church, but even outside of the church among young people that would desire mentorship. I do think part of that is because of the systematic breakdown of the value of college, in my opinion.
hmm,
Like again, if I'm kind of saying old people things myself now, is like, if I could go back, I think whenever you say back when I was growing up, and if I was your age, I was like, oh, okay, I'm getting older. So if I was to say to an 18-year-old, man, I tell a lot of 18-year-olds, hey, it's like, go to college. Sure. Especially if you're doing a job that requires college, architect, lawyer, doctor. But I was like, some of these things, especially if they're involving technology, which is rapidly changing so fast, or creativity, some of these things, they're fast paced and they change. Like fashion changes quickly, tech changes quickly, it just advances. Like I used to do photography back in college. It's only like within 5 years, the brands that people use, the styles they use, the type of cameras they use, it's so different. And so to learn from someone who once was doing it, but hasn't done it for 10 years, what there's some principles they can definitely teach, but there's some things that they're out of touch with it. And so I often say to young leaders, make sure while you're going to college that you are finding someone who is currently and frequently in that field right now. And I'd go so far to say, I would say you're going to get more value the more time you actually follow that person and the work they do. Like, let's say I was shooting a camera. This is how I learned how to do videography and photography is, can I just second shoot for you? I know you're doing weddings. I know you're doing events. I know you're doing conferences. I don't even charge. Of course, I'm so new, but I do have a camera, and I'll be able to get some shots that you won't be able to get because you got one more person. You tell me where to be. You want me backstage? I'll do the backstage stuff. So, you'll get at least some. And even I would say back in the early days, even if I shoot 100 photos and like five of those got to be good. Those five or five you would not have had. And
yeah,
I started getting better, and they're like, okay, well, if you're going to shoot for me, let's spend 3 hours together. I'm going to at least show you how to up your game in doing this. And so there's a lot of careers you could potentially follow. And what I think in following the strategic way, I tell young people is find a way to help them do what they're doing. Not just saying, will you pour into me, or can I follow you? Even a fly on the wall, be like, I'll carry your bags. I'll be your driver. I'll do whatever it is. Like, I'll make sure you don't forget something. Like, I'll alleviate some of the work. So I don't just learn from you. I'm like making life easier for you. And eventually I'm going to get better to where I'm contributing to what you do, and I add value.
Yeah, that's really good. So I mean, we see that in the workplace. So like we see that like Alex Harmozy's like, a big marketer and he's all about, offer your stuff for free at first and then like kind of learn some of the stuff. And, he talks about how like Warren Buffett offered that to Charlie Munger back in the day and, all this stuff like that. It's in the ethos of the marketplace, that
Yeah.
kind of thinking, but it's not necessarily in the ethos of the church.
Mhm.
And I think kind of like you're describing the world, like, the world from this perspective of make things easy, make things quick. I mean, that's literally how marketers sell product is I'm going to give you your dream outcome and I'm going to give it to you as fast as possible with as little effort as possible. And then we take that from the secular side and we map that over into the church side. And that's attractional church in a sense too, right?
Yeah.
Like you say, like, what kind of messaging do we have to have? That's not that doesn't mean you're a big church, you're guilty, but we kind of have some of that same mentality, on the Christian side, like
Mhm.
make the message easy, don't have much resistance, like all that sort of stuff. And I kind of heard you saying that a little bit earlier, I think.
Mhm. Yeah. I think I'm trying to remove, when it comes to like making it a little easier, is I feel like there's usually about four excuses I hear for why people don't want to do what they would consider the hard work of discipleship. And I do think discipleship is hard, just like parenting, I think is hard. I often get asked, hey, how do we reach the next generation? And I think they're looking for the silver bullet. And I'd like to sometimes say, well, yeah, just give me the silver bullet on being a great parent and making amazing kids. Like, I don't know if there is one. Like, it's just one of those things that is so worth it, but there is no shortcut to doing it. And so, but I don't want unnecessary or untrue barriers to be there that our mind goes towards. I think the four greatest excuses for why people don't disciple tend to be, and as I asked, is one, I don't have time. Like, they truly are too busy. They don't have a lot of more margin. If anything, they're trying to cut things out of their calendar, not add things to their calendar. And that's why I think discipleship and mentorship, I actually try to differentiate between this. I'm not saying this is the way, but it has helped me to kind of differentiate those two. And I kind of consider mentorship if Jesus said, come and meet with me instead of come and follow me. And many of us think of discipleship as meeting with someone regularly, pouring into them. And I had that and I've received that. And that there are people that did that for me who absolutely changed my life. Like, and they changed the way I saw God. They changed the way I saw myself. In this season, as I'm newly been married now for 3 years, they've changed the way I've approached my wife in marriage and my core values in marriage and my priorities. So those things can really change you. However, I don't know if Jesus meeting with the disciples once a week would have prepared them to do what they did in Acts. And so I would say the difference is come and meet with me, to come and follow me is I often say mentorship is adding something to your calendar. Discipleship is including someone in your calendar.
Oh, that's
And
good.
so it doesn't require more time. In fact, if you're busy, that means you have a lot you can include them in. So that gets out of that excuse, which is a warranted one. If you think you have to meet with someone regularly, it can be very hard. But if you see it as, okay, I need a hungry young person who's willing to kind of join my life, they have time. I don't as much. And young singles, especially, that I always tell young singles, this is the most time you'll ever have in your life. You don't have to ask your parents for permission. You don't have to ask your wife for permission. You can just go. Like, you can just buy things you want to buy, go where
Right.
you want to go. Like,
That's
even
good.
now, as a leader who travels and speaks and writes books, like, I still can't tonight if my friend says, hey, do you want to go to this thing? Like, I'll be like, I think so. I think Sean would be great. Like, I'm in a different world than when I was
Yeah.
young. Especially if you have kids, so Matt, I would assume you do, and I don't, but I even more reasons why it's a little harder to have time. And so that's why I always say with the, I don't have time. There's also, I don't feel qualified. Um, I like to quickly say to that is, I think we ask ourselves if we're qualified. And I think instead we should ask, are we spiritually a couple steps ahead?
Mm.
If I ask, am I qualified? Which I don't think that's ever been the question I feel like I was asking us. But I think the question is simply, we're going to say no a lot if we ask ourselves that. Am I qualified to do this? If anything, God tends to call us to do things we feel usually unqualified for. We think of Gideon. It's almost like he wants us to feel unqualified,
Mhm.
get the glory. So I don't think that's the right question, but I think asking people, do you feel like you're spiritually a couple steps ahead of this next generation? Most of them would say absolutely. And so that's what you have to offer is those couple steps ahead. If you could get them to where you are spiritually, but without the pain it took you to get there or the time it took you there, maybe even the hurt and the running into a wall, potentially some of us over and over and over again, that it could be amazing. Cause I think without that discipleship, we keep seeing a generation have to navigate a world that's somewhat already been navigated by a generation before, but without the wisdom of the generation before. And so if you're spiritually a couple steps ahead, that's amazing. And if you don't feel qualified, Saul never said, follow me, and that's it. He said, follow me or imitate me as I follow Christ or
Yeah.
imitate as I imitate Christ. So the pressure's not on us to be qualified. It's on Jesus as we are. I sometimes even tell my disciples, hey, I'm going to follow me as I stumble towards Christ. Like I'm not even going to be perfect in doing this. And I think they appreciate the realness of that. And then third, I would say a lot of times I hear the excuses, I was never discipled. And that's such a big issue. There are a lot of people who I think want to disciple, but never were discipled. I was very fortunate to get discipled 2 weeks after I got saved. There was a man who entered into my life and kind of threw down the gauntlet. Like, if you take your faith seriously, I want to pour into you. But my one catch is you have to go try to reach your high school for Christ in the next 2 years. Like
Wow.
anyone you can, because he really wanted to reach my school. And when he saw that I got saved and I went to that school and I was decently popular at the school, but it just come to faith. He just kind of said, hey, I want to reach your school. And I'd be totally down to pour into you, but you got to be a missionary to your school. And I think you could save a lot of kids' lives in your school if you're serious about this. If you're not, then let's not do it. And that was such a game changer to have a vertical relationship with God, then with an addition to a vertical mentor who was basically saying, follow me as I follow Christ, who immediately gave me a horizontal mission to accompany that discipleship. So it wasn't just this season of, oh, I'm learning so much. This is amazing. And it's terminating on me. It was immediately, I'm learning this for me, but also for them. And you listen better, ask better questions, you feel the weight of what you're learning more. And so, all that to say, most people weren't discipled when they're at all. And I would quickly say to that is, I think we have to have the same mentality we have towards if we didn't have Christian parents. Many, especially men I know who feel this maybe a little bit of leadership or intentionality they need to bring to their family. If they didn't have a Christian dad and they are a believer, they feel this weight of, I want to shift the trajectory for my family. What I wasn't given, I could point my finger and say to my kids and my wife, well, I never got that. And so I can't give you what I never received. Again, there's some more to that. And there's even some hurt to that. There's sadness even to that
Mhm.
reality. But I have seen this ability of I'm changing that for the future of my family and for my legacy so that when my kids grow up, I'm not going to be perfect. It's not going to be a full 180 maybe, but I'm going to set them up better than I was set up. And they then can do the same for so it's a trajectory shift. And then lastly is I just think a lot of people just would say, not that they don't have time or that they don't feel qualified or that they never were discipled. Often it could just be simple as, I just don't know how to do it. Like, I know I should do it. I just don't know how to do it. And so that's again why I appreciate what you guys do to continue to get more stories and direction on what could discipleship look like in your life.
So it sounds like God has positioned all those pieces, like all the necessary pieces are available. You have older people who have experience. You have Jesus' model of disciple making. You got the Bible. Like, so when you get to, like, how do you do it? He told us how to do it. Like, I need someone a few steps ahead. He gave you that too.
Yeah.
Like, all these things, at least in a church context, all the pieces are there, but then it's like, how do we actually put all those pieces together? It's like, do we say on Sunday, like something like, hey, maybe some of you young people don't think the older people want to pay much attention to you. How many of you older people like to pay attention? All the older people hands goes up. They go, oh, they really do care. And then all you older people think that the younger people don't want anything to do with you. How many younger people would like maybe an older person to like pour into you? And it's like all the like a lot of young hands go up and, oh, hey, I mean, like, how do you position, is there a way to position all the available resources to connect those dots.
Yeah. I've been I've been encouraging churches lately. I've seen a couple do it, is to start by getting the people who already have leanings towards each other together and in a meaningful way, ideally. So when I say that, I actually use the movie Remember the Titans a little bit as a roadmap, a bit.
Yeah.
'Cause I do think it's good to look at what are models that have worked. We always focus on what's wrong. I want to look at what's worked, and there's not perfect. It's not a perfect analogy, but it has some principles that are similar. In that, and Remember the Titans, or many, if you really think about it, movies about racial reconciliation. Because right here we're kind of talking about generational reconciliation. And most race movies and racial reconciliation movies, they tend to be sports movies. They're not all sports movies, but a lot of them are. Like there's a unique uptick of the movie in that genre from the 42 about Jackie Robinson, Race about Jesse Owens, Glory Road about the first college basketball team to start five black players to man, The Blind Side. Then of course, I think Remember the Titans is the best of them all. I mean, I think it's just one of the best movies in general. And in that movie, the both parties, black people and white people, even the black parents and the white parents, unlike some of these other movies where they don't address the elephant in the room, though there is clearly an elephant in the room, eventually they have to address that. That in this movie, they start with the elephant in the room. It's like, I am not playing for a black coach. They, you guys took the white coach's job. And then not only that, the parents are like, hey, you will play or you will honor. No, the parents like, I'm not, my kid will not play. We'll leave. We'll go to a different school. They go straight to the elephant is so in the room. They're rioting. And so it's helpful because at least they're all being honest at how they feel. And there is that tension. I think thankfully there's not usually any church I've been to, though I'm sure they're out there that has that level of tension between generations. But there are elephants and landmines in the room, if you will, among generations. There are differences. And one of the brilliant moves that the coach does, Denzel Washington's character, I think it's Coach Boone is his name, is takes them on a retreat. He's like, I'm getting you out of this space. This place is toxic right now. Let's get away for a little bit. And then he, of course, pairs up the white players and the black players. And he creates things where they have to have fun together and then they have to work together. And one of the unique things, though, that I would kind of translate this into generations and churches is I like to go into churches and ask them, the older leaders who are, start with the younger leaders. I'll start with some of the young people, and these are staff as well as just congregation, young people that have been there. And I like to ask them, who are some of the older people here who are enthusiastic or excited about the next generation? Or they just love on you guys well. Like, and it's always so cool to hear a group of 5 to 10 to 20 young people say like, oh, Sally or Margie, or there's always different names because of the generations. And they're like, yeah, she's amazing. She always like, I've seen it where like she brings cookies every Sunday, or she always like encourages us, or you could just tell she just loves being around us. Like she almost gets more energized by being around us than her own generation. And they sometimes are staff people. And I think even better when they're not. They're like, there's this intentionality and leaning. Something there is magnetic about that person towards the next gen. And they're haven't told they have to do that. They are naturally doing that. So I want to take note of who those 5, 10, 20 older people are. And then I like to ask the older people too, who are some of the young people here who have really stuck around, and they could have gone to the church where all the other young people will go to instead, or they have a lot of honor, or you're impressed by their hunger or their humility, or just they got a little bit of character, or at least they stuck around. Cause sometimes it is still a sacrifice to stay for a long period of time. It's like, they're still at the heart of that. I want to be here, and I'm not leaving to go where all the other young people are going, or just leaving the church in general, which is where more even of the young people are going. But getting some of those young people to be around some of those older people, because those would be my select group to start with. Mm-hmm. You could try to change the whole culture all at once, but I think it's better to create a little bit of a movement within. And so then instead of saying, hey, we're thinking about doing this, it's like, we've been doing this. You maybe even heard murmurs or seen some of this. Do you want to join what's already happening? There's just a difference in how that's received. But even then bigger than that, after you get them together, which I personally like retreats. I'm a retreat guy. There's something about when you have to spend a night somewhere, even maybe 2 nights somewhere, you just kind of check out a little bit more. If you're a busy, successful person, you're telling your team or your assistant, hey, I'm out the next couple of days. It's not just a meeting or a dinner even where you're like checking your watch, or I got to get back home with my kids, the babysitter, or if it's a meeting during the day, it's like, I got to jump on a Zoom call quickly, or I got a phone call and I'm going to jump in the car and get on. It's kind of like I'm here, I'm present. They're a lot more present. There's also a lot more room to create experiences. Even the people, how much of our experiences and connections at retreats happen with outside of the conference type setting of teaching. It's the buff beds and staying up so late, or a campfire. It's not a lot of spaces for that to happen in church. If it's just Sunday morning, it's honestly, it is seeing the back of someone's head most of the time. There's a little bit of time, and sometimes they give the 30 seconds to say hello to your neighbor, but I don't think major relationships are being formed there. But we need to give room for strategic people like these people, I would say, to have a meaningful time together. And then the third piece would be, I would encourage to identify who are somewhat of the ringleaders among the older generation, like one or two, and who are the ringleaders among the younger generation. Like if these older generation leaders were to say to the rest of their generation in the church, hey, we need to do this. We need to stop just criticizing the next gen. Or we can't just create gossip all the time. Or I always say no group of people wants to be a part of a group of people that makes fun of their group of people. And think about that racially. I think about that denominationally. You could think about that any group of any way. But often the church, I think, is just as bad as the world in just joking about the next generation or criticizing the next generation. But even joking, again, we've all been in a friend group that just loves to joke about us and make fun of us. You don't last long in that friend group. You don't usually want to stay. You definitely don't get excited to be around that group. You're like, okay, yeah, like put on the thicker skin, because this is the kind of community or culture that has a culture of just not trying to crush them, but they would just like to poke at us a lot. Why would we want that kind of culture if we want to reach the next generation? And so again, but if a young person says that to older people, it's kind of like griping, or, hey, come on, are you thin skinned, or you're like, your generation can't handle this. However, if older generation says it to his own generation, then it's kind of like, it's calling them higher. It's not received as griping or complaining. It's kind of like, hey, we got to live into this. And how this happens in Remember the Titans is when the white player, Bertier, calls out the other white player for not blocking for the black players. He's like, hey, we are not going to win a game if you don't start blocking for the black players. And that is the linchpin shift, in my opinion, in the trajectory of that group story and that team story is when they kind of call out their own people, if you will, or their own generation, if you will. There's something massive, because that then has an effect on Julius, who's the most influential black player, to then tell his other black guys, like, we are going to do this for the white player. We are going to work with them. We're going to come together. And I mean, in the movie, it's cinematic. So they legit, after this fight scene where they finally like get it together and go to bat for each other, and call out each other for each other, then, because again, the white player would, in this case, but let's say be the older generation, when older people just complain, or maybe could say the same exact thing that the young person says to other young people, saying like, hey, we've got to be hungry if we're going to do this well. Like, we've got to stop like being lazy. We have to keep our yes. We have to keep our no. If you guys, of course, know, if we're not faithful, if we're not available, if we're not teachable, this isn't going to work. Like, we are lagging in there, and we've got to seek out wisdom. When they say that, it doesn't come off like griping, or when I was your age, or, man, you guys, it's received differently horizontally. And so that's when the linchpin, I think, changes. And so especially then getting those 2 or 3 or 4 older leaders and younger leaders who have that kind of influence in the church together, it's not going to solve everything, but it's a great tip of the spear to kind of start pioneering, I think, a new culture multi-generationally in the church.
And then maybe you add in the retreat or add in something else and kind of start building that.
Yeah.
Man.
Because a lot of retreats tend to be generationally segregated, not intentionally at all. But just the nature of, this is what that really is. As a men's retreat, kind of really is mostly the older men's retreat. You don't see a lot of the high school students, and some churches do have that, but I haven't seen too much where, because the high school students tend to do their own retreat and their own camp. And then even I'm a big advocate for even mission trips. There's something powerful and communal about a mission trip, even though that's 0% of the goal is to create friendship through it or bond. But the goal is to go to group of here goes over here to impact these people. But I've never seen a mission trip where these guys don't usually inevitably come back closer And then everyone asks, hey, how was the trip? You've been gone for 5 days, 10 days. And it's hard to really regurgitate the feeling, the experience. However, this group for years, honestly, will get it. They kind of had a bond that happened there. There's people I went to Israel for 9 days with who sometimes I don't see them, but every year or two. But when I see them, I'm like, yo, it's like their family. Like it's so good to see you because we spent 9 days in another culture and trying to accomplish a mission together. We sometimes we even see little kids, our children go to camp. They're so nervous. No, I don't want to go. Like, please don't send us. And then we force them to go to camp. They come back and they like love these other kids, hang out with them all the time. And so we got to be thoughtful about these, when I say meaningful times to connect people. And I actually don't think even small groups is that, though it's something, it's helpful. Anything is better than nothing. Retreats, mission trips. I would even add sports leagues if your church potentially has those. These things that, again, you'll notice in these movies, one of the, none of these movies that around racial reconciliation are movies where it's like one time together and everything was solved. I don't know if you've seen The Green Book or even Hidden Figures. These are other non-sports movies that are about racial reconciliation as well. They all require a long period of time together, going in the same direction, trying to accomplish the same mission. And through doing journeying together, eventually there's like this linchpin point of like, we got to go to bat for each other and work together. And so I think sports, I mean, there's a way people connect through sports, and personalities come out through sports you don't ever see in church. And they're fun. And it could be risky too, 'cause some people go crazy at sports, but even that could be a funny story. And so I encourage these more meaningful, connective ways to get them together.
That's so good. Yeah, I was on a call right before this one where part of our conversation was on play and celebration.
Yeah.
That kind of is like that like that, as you're not walking through Remember the Titans, like at some point, like they're playing the other guy and then you win and then you celebrate like together. And then like when that elderly guy gets up on Sunday to lead that prayer or whatever, you're like, he was on my team. Like, that was great. We're in this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think play is amazing. It's funny you use the word play. There's this book called Play. It's by, I think it's Michael Stewart. And he actually gives like the 9 profiles of play that people have. And from like some people, it's competitive play. That's more me. Like I like getting really good and I can get competitive and like there's a revival in the church right now in America. Pickleball is what I would say. And
that was the example we used. Yeah, that's funny.
That is honestly, I think revival and pickleball could lead to a revival in church because it's one of the most like multi-gen sports I think there is. Like, tell me another. I'm trying to really think of what's another sport that so many older people play and younger people play. Because I'm getting to the point where I'm not playing basketball as much, and I used to because I get hurt. It seems like golf is becoming that too. Like in 2020, golf and pickleball could unite generations.
I'll tell you another one. Okay, completely unexpected is shuffleboard.
Oh yeah, I've seen that a little bit.
Because like the young people are like, this is just so different. Like this is kind of weird. You got like that. Like the bident, it's like the trident that's got like the 2 pieces, and it's like you're like just something like that is just so ridiculous that it's just funny.
Yeah. What I like about pickleball is so many older people are so much better than young people. Like there's, and a lot of athletic sports, there is points where if you're faster or stronger, like you're going to be better at this game. But that's one of the games where it's like, you don't need it. There's a point where it's skill and not just speed or strength. Like, and they matter a little bit, but like golf, like it's the great equalizer when it comes to age. And I get beat all the time by not even just old, I'm talking way older than me and girls, like 2 girl team against me and another friend who we played it, but they're just so good. They're so good in the kitchen. They just crush us. And I haven't learned how to do the kitchen good enough. My heart starts beating when I'm in the kitchen and they're like just going boom, 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 boom. I'm like, please keep hitting it to my partner. Like it's a fun game to play with different generations. But yeah, this playbook kind of, I encourage it because learning how to play together as generations, there's a way you connect in marriage. There's a way you connect with complete strangers. I do retreats for about 200 to 300 leaders across the nation. It's a private invite. They all are like high capacity speakers, authors, musicians, nonprofit leaders, actors, Olympic athletes. And I do play big time to connect all these strangers. I'm trying to unite the church of young Christian leaders. And I actually put them on teams like the West, the leaders from California, Portland, Seattle, all them, they're going to play the South. And then there's the Northeast and the Midwest. I have four.
Then you got Texas. You got to give Texas their own thing, right?
Yeah, I could. But they get like a bandana and a color, and
That's awesome.
people jump in very, very quickly into
That's
like, all right, West, we're going up against the New Yorkers, the Boston, and New
Yeah.
Jersey, and Philly. And it's so fun to see not only them connect in ways they maybe wouldn't connect if I just put them in a room together and let them do socialize. But especially the teams, like I'm trying to connect the Northeast leaders across the nation, race, and occupation or industry. They are having to rely on each other. And there's just so many conversations that happen afterwards because of this. And so that book, just to finish the thought, is like I can't remember all of them, but I remember one of them is like kinesthetic is what he says, play. These are like the people that they like to do more physical, like running, or they want to they got to move their body and play. And they could do it also by themselves. And then there was something like Daredevil. And these are the people that like to play. They want to do something that gets their heart pounding, like in that kind of play of like jumping out of a plane or mountain biking, where it's like going way too fast or whatever. It is some type of experience, but just finding your style of play. And maybe there's other people in the church that also like that kind of play, and just always having a shadow or an apprentice or people that are just being intentional. If you're already going to play, bring others to play with you who are from other generations.
That's so good. So just wrapping up here in the last minute or two, I'm just thinking about kind of what you shared. And I love that it's such a sticky idea of like taking Remember the Titans and taking some of the shifts and the moments that happen there and the ahas and like how all that connects. And then like how you just so practically took that and said, like, this is how this could look in a church. And like, you kind of like walk through that. And what I really hope is like, if there's there are church leaders like listening to this and watching this, like go back in this video and kind of watch what Grant said and like, think about your church, what you just said, Grant, and think about your church and think about like, who are those core people? Like, who are the core older people and the core younger people? And cause I think what you laid out was so simple and so practical and so impactful. And it's just so doable. Like that's just so like I hate to say low hanging fruit because it's super impactful fruit. It's not like just the easy, it's accessible, you know? And so do you have any last words for us? Any practical insights?
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, the great thing about, especially starting with that group, if you will, to just say, we're going to do something to kind of pioneer a little bit of change to create more multi-generational health within our church, is it's fun. Like it's a fun way to do it. And as we all know, good discipleship is mutually beneficial. It's mutually encouraging, especially it's mutually energizing. It's so amazing to see how much young people can energize older people through discipleship too. Cause young people already have somewhat energy. They're kind of known they're in that season of energy and building and passion. I always say it's not hard to find passionate millennials. It's hard, or next gen or Gen Z. It's hard to find prayerful ones where they're like the wisdom it takes and the slowness that usually comes. Most prayer gatherings in my experience have been older people. And so again, getting those two together, but it is the fun of both groups are energizing and bringing new life. I got in with a story is I used to live in Dallas and got to meet, there's a guy, Chad Hennings, who I always say he played for the Cowboys when the Cowboys actually were good and when we were winning. And that he was somewhat of a mentor to me for a short season where we would meet here and there and he'd pour into me. He once told me a story about when he was playing for the Cowboys, he was in his 20s and newly married, and he had two kids, and his kids were probably, let's say, like 4 to 7 to 8 years old. And basically that his kids were like begging, Dad, can we please get a dog? And can we want a little puppy? And they got a little baby puppy who's known for, like young people, with a lot of passion, a lot of zeal, a lot of energy, but needs the wisdom of, okay, where do you go to the bathroom? Not here. Like, where do you eat? This is where your food is. Like, eat it in the bowl. Don't spill it everywhere. Like, hey, it jumps, when you're young puppies, they just bark anytime someone knocks on the door, rings the doorbell. It's like their EQ isn't the best, if you will. And a long story somewhat short is this dog got a lot older. Maybe I think he said it was about 10 to 12 years old as a dog, which of course is like really old for a dog. And he said that the kids now, teenagers, still wanted to play with the puppy or the dog now, but the dog was so much older. I think his name was Bo. And the kids were like, man, Dad, like, can we get another puppy? Like, Bo is so boring now. He doesn't want to play. He just lays down. He just sits. He's kind of like, they said that Bo used to jump on people when they came to the door. And now someone would knock on the door, even walk to the door. Bo would be in his little bed and just look up and kind of be like, what's up? And then just go back to bed. Like, he just didn't care anymore. And they got Bo checked on, and the vet was like, man, yeah, he's not doing too well. He's probably going to die this year. He's not making it much more than maybe a year and a half, if not the next couple months. And so they did get another puppy. And it was so interesting is they said this little puppy, again, repeat the process, has all this zeal, energy and all this. And that the little puppy wanted to play with Bo all the time because that's the dog that's in the house. And all of a sudden they said Bo with his new puppy started going outside again, playing again, like showing him where to eat, where to go to the bathroom. Like he's kind of guiding him, but also this little puppy was getting Bo to do all these things that he had not been doing for a long, long time. And that Bo lived many years more because what Chad said is because this little puppy would not let that dog die. And he kind of quoted the common saying we know that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. He said, you may not be able to teach an old dog new tricks, but you can give an old dog a new puppy. And I said, and that kind of gives them a new purpose when they do a new puppy. And so it's very mutually beneficial. I believe it's mutually energizing. It gives a lot of mutual hope in the future of the church. And so that's what I love about when it happens is you bring these generations that have leanings towards each other and they start kind of modeling how actually fun multi-generational stuff can be. Because the world has won a lot and we've kind of contributed to this fear of the future. Oh my gosh, it's where everyone's leaving the church and the next generation. It's so bad. And I always say there's a lot of fear, even in the church of the future. It's an election year. It's going to be so hard. And that kind of turns off, I think, the next gen a lot. I think we want to see not this like Murphy's Law mentality of faith of like anything that can go wrong is just going to go wrong. But the Bible is more like in Psalms, we see it's surely goodness and mercy. It's assumptive the other way. It's not assumptive that it's going to go bad. It's assumptive that surely goodness and mercy will follow me. Or as surely as the sun will rise, he will come for us. And show me older people that freak out. And I mean, I get it. It is unique times. We talked about that in the beginning, but show me older people come around next gen are like, man, the best is yet to come. Revival is going to come in your generation. And I'll show you older people that young people love to be around. And it's just going to be, I think the new narrative needs to be a little bit more of that within the faith and the church.
You reminded me a little bit of Walter Brueggemann, like the message of the Psalms and like Psalms of orientation, everything's well. There's some of those, nothing's going wrong. And then there's disorientation, like I'm in the pit. And then there's new orientation. I was in the pit and then I cried out for help. And now God is like, brought new things. And a lot of times it feels like we're just in those disoriented, we kind of live in that disoriented mode. And maybe that's easier to do the older you get, I'm getting a little bit older, but maybe some people older than myself would answer that question for us in the comments. But, it feels like it's really easy, like Bo, the dog, to kind of get in that zone, lay around and kind of wait and see what's going to happen. And I'm not saying all older people do that either, but yeah, I love that analogy or that story. That illustration is really powerful because it's also easy to say, well, the older people have all this value to offer the younger people. And it's like, well, what value goes the other way? And I think you just illustrated that so profoundly in that story. So I appreciate you kind of wrapping us up on a note of hope and a note of joy and new birth and new things and good things to look forward to. I just really do appreciate your heart and where you're coming from. And, if people want to learn more about what you're doing, we're going to put those links to Think and the NextGen Summit in the description. And I just highly recommend that you all go click those links and check out what's going on there and just get the resources that you need.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, man.